Thank you very much, Dalia, for the introduction. Just quick check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Yes,
So
yeah.
good. Thank you for the invitation to participate in the event. As you know, I'm a big fan of the work that Global Lithuanian Leaders does as an organization, and honored to be here with everybody else. So thank you. As Dalia mentioned, Lavero Aviation is a private aviation solutions provider. And what that means is that we help ultra high net worth individuals and corporations formulate multi-million-dollar buying decisions. We help them evaluate whether a corporate aircraft would help them do business more efficiently, or even spend more time with their families. We source an aircraft, and this is a very simple overview. We source an aircraft for them and handhold them through every step of the complicated process of buying a business jet. We can then maintain the aircraft for them, crew it, operate it for them if desired, and then eventually help them sell their aircraft and acquire the next one. On the support side, we support many critical humanitarian flying missions, and that is important on all days, but especially today. And we take that very seriously in the decisions that we make internally as a company. Aircraft are often one of the most critical business tools that a company possesses, and companies that engage in the use of private aviation typically do better than similar companies that do not, as a form of driving revenue. Our organization, we've been around since 97. Our aircraft sales department has upwards of 75 years of experience in helping customers, and we are among a select group of only 3% of aircraft brokers globally that have been accredited by the International Aircraft Dealers Association, and that group does 60% of transactions globally. And we are also the exclusive distributor for a Swiss aircraft manufacturer called Pilatus. Start of COVID. I'm certainly not here to tell you how to do things. I'll just give you a little bit of insight into what our approach was. Beginning in early March in North America, at least, we began seeing the very early signs of COVID-19. And I had personally just come back from a trip to Florida where I was looking at various business jets to acquire for a customer. And when I came home in that very first week, I decided to begin self-quarantining, even before it was mandated in Canada. So what that means is that in a few days, it'll be 3 months of work from home for me, and somebody who's in the aviation space and used to traveling. It's quite an adjustment, to say the least. As a company, the immediate decision we made was to relocate those that we could, including our sales and marketing department, from working in the office environment to working from home, and getting set up and ready for what we knew was likely going to become a new reality for the foreseeable future. We do face challenges, is that not everybody can work from home. Aircraft mechanics can't work from home. Our business revolves around customer interaction, and so this was a huge adjustment from the get-go for us. Internally as a company, we like to meet in person, to brainstorm, to create and strategize, and doing this online, on Teams and Zoom felt forced at first. But if you recall to when the pandemic first started, one of the major fears of the time for everyone was, quite frankly, the unknown about personal health and safety, unknown about the economy, unknown about company sustainability for that matter, and so on. Going overboard on these Zoom and Teams and video calls for us in the beginning of work from home was a conscious decision we made. We wanted to assure our employees that while we were scrambling to figure out how to do business in the new reality, that we didn't forget about them. And we cared about how they were doing. Our staff are all professionals capable of working unsupported, but something as simple as periodic check-ins and some visual interaction goes a long way. We did the same with our customers. They come from a huge cross-section of industries, some of which were very hard hit: hospitality, hotels, car dealerships, real estate, oil and gas. And so, we try and maintain an open dialogue at all times with customers, but checking in during these uncertain times was very important, we felt. Another conscious decision we made early was to turn sales mode off and shift into conversation mode. We are very active on social media, and this is one of the places where we immediately changed our strategy in the moment. Communication goes a long way, and we wanted to make sure not only to let our customers know that we were there to help answer any questions they had, but again, the same for our employees. We truly feel that caring for your people translates down the line better than any other way, in our humble opinion. What does the market look like? We have completed aircraft transactions during COVID, but it's a safe generalization to say that business globally came to a halt. While March was likely the busiest month that aircraft charter companies ever had, largely due to repatriations bringing citizens home, April barely had a pulse. On the aircraft sales and acquisition side, April was the start of what the global market saw as a pause for a solid month and a half. Most aircraft listed for sale remained stagnant unless sellers were willing to entertain opportunistic buyers. And most sellers have shown that they are not. What's interesting is that just under 10%, about 9.8 of the global fleet of corporate aircraft was for sale pre-COVID. And that number has really only gone up to just over 10%, 10.3. Compare that to the 08 financial crisis, where 10 to 12% of the fleet was for sale at the time. And when the markets crashed, that jumped to almost 20%, meaning that nearly 1 in 5 aircraft in the world were for sale back then. This is not happening today. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen customers come back to the table and re-engage. They're gearing up to begin traveling again in the near term and want to be ready. Transactions are taking longer than the usual because of approvals, regulatory restrictions surrounding COVID, quite frankly. We likely don't have time to get into it here, but I can tell you about buying airplanes today out of China and selling them into Russia, an exercise that's complicated on a good day. Throw COVID into the mix and not being able to physically visit or see the aircraft you're spending millions on, the aircraft not being able to fly to you because of border restrictions and scrambling to close those aircraft in countries that I had barely heard mentioned before the pandemic has become the new norm for us, for now at least. Business jet deliveries are projected to be down from anywhere from 15% to almost 50% year over year. And our recovery in our industry is likely looking to be a U-shaped recovery that will take possibly 2 years. We have started to see an uptick, though, which is positive. Now, while global aviation, business aviation activity is at about 50% of what it was last year, airline activity is a whole other story. It's down about 85% below normal levels. While I said business aviation has started to steadily increase, airlines are being absolutely decimated. While Europe is beginning to lift travel bans in June, International Air Transport Association is expecting semi-permanent damage to the airline industry, and that demand for those that do get out of this may not recover for another 4 or 5 years. As a local example, as Cynthia can attest, Canada-US share the longest unprotected border in the world. That remains closed still today to non-essential travel. If and when a second wave of the pandemic occurs, these numbers are only going to be stretched further. Some numbers to put things in perspective. Air Canada, the largest carrier in Canada, posted a $1 billion loss last quarter. That's one airline in one quarter. United Airlines in the United States is operating at about 10%. They're hoping to get to 25% in the next month as international travel increases. Aerolíneas Argentinas in Argentina, business is down 97%. Let that register for a second. They are making 3%, or they're doing 3% of the business that they previously were. How is this going to impact a traveler? The check-in process is going to get more cumbersome. Think of physical distancing requirements that exist in the open today. What 9/11 did to security because of shoes, et cetera, COVID will only amplify. Disinfecting, temperature checks, the use of PPE in airports, on the airplanes. There's talk of only checked baggage, and you can appreciate how that extends a travel day. Some airlines are considering having wellness experts on board every single flight. That also means a non-revenue passenger on those flights. What does it mean to food service? Does it mean you need to limit the passengers on board? The EU spoke about limiting passenger loads to 66%. That's close to break-even levels. Not sustainable. Cleaning aircraft is going to be time-consuming. Forget 20-minute turns that a lot of the low-cost carriers try to do. It just won't be possible, and less flights in a day means less revenue. Predictions in the early days of COVID were that the airline industry was going to lose $100 billion. But those numbers could get worse. To put things in perspective, SARS in 2003 cost the industry $7 billion. Today, there are almost 20,000 commercial aircraft that are parked, many of which will never fly again. All of this to say that airlines are in for a very long recovery, if at all, for some. You can expect significant more inconvenience when traveling until a vaccine is in place, and potentially even after that. On the contrary, I expect business aviation, that market is going to rebound much quicker. Business needs to go on. People need to travel. Our customers are just waiting for that green light of health to be able to travel. And overall, the business aircraft is no longer just a time machine for our company, for any company. It's now a way where they will also be able to protect the health of their employees going forward. And these are factors that companies are now taking into account when making travel decisions. So I hope I don't sound too doom and gloom. I'm just trying to be a bit realistic with what's out there today. And I trust I've given you a bit of insight, and I could go a lot longer, but I think my time's up. So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Stasys. And here, I see some, I'm reading the question, sorry for my pause, but definitely Stasys, very, very, very interesting presentation, and about also the trends and what can we expect. Of course, no rainbows and butterflies, right? But hoping for the recovery as soon as possible in the industry, from the traveler side, and also from your industry, business industries side. I would like to actually ask you, as as you told that some of the businesses are working and only in 3% of their capacities, and who are possibly going to be industry-wise, who are going to be winners? I mean, some companies are going to buy some dying companies. Can you give your prediction in that field? I mean, someone is going to win anyway from this situation. I mean, I'm looking only from a business perspective. So, what is your view globally on that?
Yeah, quite frankly, I think it's less of who's going to win and more so who's going to survive. Mm-hmm. You know, when you look at the largest carriers in countries declaring that they are having massive financial issues, that should be the telltale sign of how bad this is. The first carriers that I believe will be not restarting, if that makes sense, is those that had difficulty already in a cash flow basis before the pandemic began. They have all but no chance to come back. You know, there are different governments are supporting the airline industry in different ways, and so that answer is different regionally. I can see it. I believe it's Arnoldas has asked a question touching on that, and you know, the United States came out with something that's called the CARES Act, where they are offering support. Canada, on the other hand, is they have more of a one-size-fits-all solution to businesses and to subsidize employee wages. Our government is not necessarily, when I say our, Canadian government is not necessarily pro-business, as I believe it needs to be in this time. And so it's going to be challenging. In the interim, those that can pivot are surviving and being successful now. Pivoting today in the airline world largely has been moving from passenger travel to cargo, and shifting the teams that deal with passengers and just dumping them into the cargo world and say, all right, now you sell cargo, now you manage the cargo process, go. And those airlines that are able to pivot and react quickly are doing okay. But even those that are, I say, doing okay, have laid off thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And so their future is uncertain. And the reality is, the longer that this goes on, the more trouble they'll have. And again, keep in mind, this is the first wave. This is the first wave of a pandemic that has no vaccine. And so if the government spent X amount of dollars, and various governments globally spent X amount of dollars already, what happens in the next wave? And those who survive the first wave, do they survive the second wave? I don't know.